Imagine believing something about your existence your whole life, only to find out later that what you believed was all a lie. This was the fate of Steve Lichtig, who, while growing up, thought that he was the son of an adoptive parent, only to find out when he was 18 that the person he thought had been his sister was his biological mom. The remarkable story of Steve reveals the fact that even in a happy family, there can be secrets. As a child, young Steve believed that Don, a World War II veteran, and his wife, Mary Jane Lichtig, were his adoptive parents. He was raised by this couple who owned a farm in Kansas, along with their 8 biological children. Even though he was younger than his siblings by a few years, he had a strong connection with them, especially his beautiful sister, Joni. It appeared his devoted Catholic parents were upfront with him from the outset. They had not hidden the fact that he was adopted and was not their biological child. Regardless, he still felt as if something was not right. He spent most of his teen years yearning for information about his biological parents and the situation that surrounded his adoption. Even though he felt that something might be off, he was loved and cared for, especially by his siblings, who all seemed to be overprotective of him. He felt like he could not have wished for a better family to be adopted into. Still, Steve was putting together a plan to get in touch with his biological parents. He wasn't sure when that would happen, but he someday hoped to see them face to face. However, when he found out the truth about his biological parents, he was shocked, and all his planning and wishing had been all for nothing. The American did not know that his family was hiding a secret that would change his entire life. After Steve turned 18, he was done with high school, and his graduation was to take place the following day. The young man wanted to celebrate his accomplishment, so he invited 2 of his friends, Vance and Ellen, who had been friends with him and his family for many years. However, he noticed that his 2 best friends were not comfortable being in the house. For his friends, they had been expecting this night to come. They knew Steve was to graduate the next day, so they thought it was finally time for him to know the truth, otherwise he might find out on his own. I don't have a strong recollection of it, but what I do remember is it was right before high school graduation, the night before. Alan and Vance walked into my bedroom, and they shut the door behind them. With that, his friend Vance faced him and said those fateful words, "We have something we want to tell you." Until this moment, Steve had believed that he was adopted by strangers. Unknown to him, those people he thought were strangers were his grandparents. He also thought Joni was his sister, but this was not true. Vance revealed the family secret that Steve never expected. Then Vance just blurted it out. It just sort of came out of him. He said, "I know who your mom is." Steve was taken by surprise, as he couldn't believe what he just heard. The next revelation was even more shocking, as his friends told him that his mother had always been right in front of his eyes the whole time, and the road trip he planned to see her wouldn't be necessary. Finally, they told him that his biological mother was his older sister, Joni. Steve was stunned. It felt surreal to hear that the person he thought was his older sister was his biological mother. How is that even possible? He thought. This revelation left him dumbfounded as his entire world came crashing down. He was particularly shocked that the person with whom he had spent 18 years of his life, who had heard him talk about finding his actual parents, had been his mom all along. He remembered playing with Joni when he was about 8 years old. Steve recalled telling her, "Joni, you take the baby down. You are the mom. You have to be my mom, Joni." He remembered not understanding why she cried then, but now he does, as his tears flowed from his eyes and slid down his cheeks. The co-founder of Small Good Thing couldn't believe that his whole life was a lie. He was even more heartbroken when his friends told him that every other person he had grown up with knew about the situation. They told me that they had known for basically their entire lives, and that everybody I'd grown up with had known for their entire lives, Steve said. For him, that was the biggest blow. He couldn't say much, and he thanked his friends for telling him the secret. At first, he did not confront his family about the issue, even as they all gathered around him on his graduation day to take pictures. At his graduation, he interacted with his family as if nothing had happened, and had his graduation party that night in May 1987. He thought that if he said nothing, his life could just continue as normal. According to Steve, he held it in for another month and a half. After weeks had passed, the now successful radio producer could no longer keep up with this act. So he started to question some things in his childhood that did not make sense. he decided it was the right time to confront the people he had always referred to as his parents, Dawn and Mary Jane, about the entire issue. When he confronted them, as expected, they denied at first. Mary Jane acted as though she did not know what he was talking about. She was unwilling to tell him the truth, until finally, Dawn, who Steve now knew to be his grandfather, became tired of the whole conversation and told his wife to tell him the truth. "Will you just tell him?" Dawn exclaimed. There was no turning back, and she had to tell Steve the truth he already knew. She admitted that she was his grandmother and his biological mother was Joni. The teenager thought he was ready to hear the truth from his grandparents, but when he did, he could not handle it. He was devastated and had to run away. Then, being an 18-year-old and angry, I ran away. I got into a car and drove to the nearest town, which was 20 miles away, and rented a motel room. The news of Steve away from his hometown spread quickly, and soon Joni realized that he had discovered the truth. She looked for a way to reach her son to talk things out with him. Joni was able to get in touch with him through a phone call. At first, she kept denying the story until she finally admitted the truth. It so happened that she had gotten pregnant at 14 during the 1970s, and for something like this to happen in rural Kansas during that time was a big disgrace on the family. That was why she and her family covered it up the way they did. After telling him the whole truth, she thought he would understand.